When you finally learn to be still, you realize that silence is not surrender, and calm is not defeat. The world may see your stillness as weakness, but heaven knows it as your highest form of trust, because it takes courage to be quiet when everything around you screams for reaction. It takes spiritual strength to not respond to every insult, to not defend yourself in every storm, and to not panic when life feels out of control. The truth is, God often works best in your stillness, not your striving. Because stillness means you've handed him the steering wheel. It means you're not moving out of fear or impulse or ego, but you're waiting on his whisper, his instruction, his timing. And when you wait in stillness, you begin to see that clarity flows, peace settles, and strength rises, not because you've done something, but because you chose not to force anything. Your silence speaks faith, your stillness releases surrender, and both become a platform for God to move in ways your hands could never make happen. People may question your calmness. They may not understand your lack of urgency, but that's because they don't know what you know. They don't see the war you've already surrendered. They don't hear the conversations you've already had with God, and they don't feel the assurance you've already received in your spirit. Sometimes standing still is louder than shouting. Sometimes staying quiet is stronger than fighting. And when your posture is still and your heart is steady, you're positioned for divine action, because you're no longer trying to play God. You're trusting the one who is. So keep standing still, not as someone who's lost, but as someone who's aligned. Keep holding your peace, not because you're weak, but because you know who fights for you. And keep trusting that the God who sees your silence will answer it with power. There comes a moment in your walk with God when you realize that your voice is not always needed. Your arguments, your defenses, your explanations, they all fall short when compared to what God can say in one breath of his presence. Silence isn't empty, it's full of reverence. And when you step back and choose to be quiet, you're actually handing the mic over to the one who never loses a battle. Sometimes silence is your greatest spiritual weapon, not because you're defeated, but because you're confident in who goes before you. When you stop talking, you start hearing not the noise of your surroundings, but the voice of heaven. Your stillness becomes sacred, your silence becomes strategy, and your trust begins to echo louder than your words. There's power in saying nothing when you know God is saying everything. There's power in choosing peace over pride, calm over chaos, and worship over reaction. In the quiet moments, he speaks the clearest, not through thunder, but through the whisper that settles your soul and gives you direction. And when you stay silent, not out of fear, but out of faith, you position yourself under divine authority. You say to heaven, I don't need to fight this. I just need to listen and wait and watch. And that's when things begin to shift. Battles get handled, answers start arriving, doors begin to open, and you realize it wasn't your voice that made the difference. It was your silence that made room for his. You don't need to make announcements for your elevation. When God promotes you, it will be obvious. You don't need to argue to be understood. When God is your defender, you will be vindicated without speaking. So stay quiet when led to speak when called, and let your silence be a sanctuary where God's word takes the lead. There will be seasons when you are wronged, when your heart is misunderstood, when your silence is mocked, and your intentions are questioned, and everything inside of you wants to speak, defend, fight, prove, but the spirit within you says be still. Because when God is your defender, you don't need a case to argue, or a platform to justify. You don't need the approval of men to validate the truth you're carrying. And the justice of heaven never depends on the voices of earth. What's unfair to you is still fully seen by him, and what people do in secret, God will expose in light. The power of divine justice is that it's always on time, always complete, and always exact in its wisdom. It doesn't come wrapped in revenge, but in restoration. And it doesn't just settle scores, it heals hearts when you choose not to retaliate. You're not backing down, you're rising higher, because forgiveness doesn't mean weakness. It means strength under control, and silence in the face of accusation means you trust a higher courtroom. You see, God doesn't need your defense, he needs your surrender. And while the world moves fast, he moves perfectly, and when he moves it's final. His justice silences lies, his timing humbles pride, and His ways are always above ours. So don't let temporary pain make you miss eternal justice. Don't let bitterness delay your breakthrough, and don't let their actions rob you of your response. Because what you hand over to God, He handles with fire and mercy. Your job is not to prove your worth, it's to stay aligned with your identity. Your assignment is not to fight people, it's to walk in peace. And when it's all said and done, the same people who hurt you will have to witness the grace that covers you, because divine justice doesn't just protect, it promotes. And that promotion comes without striving, without forcing, and without even saying a word. There is a powerful shift that happens in your walk with God when you stop chasing results and start walking in obedience. When you stop asking what will happen and start asking what He wants you to do, your peace no longer depends on outcomes, because your focus is fixed on the one who gives the instruction. Obedience is not always glamorous, it doesn't always come with applause, and most times it looks like quiet faithfulness behind the scenes, but heaven moves through those moments. Obedience is not about seeing instant change, it's about trusting eternal purpose, and there is a kind of strength that comes when you follow God even when you don't understand the why, even when the path is unclear and the reward is invisible. But your heart still says yes, because obedience is the seed that unlocks supernatural harvests, and the enemy wants you to focus on outcomes, so you get discouraged when it looks like nothing's changing. But God wants your eyes on Him so that you can keep walking even when there's no sign on the road. Obedience is where faith becomes real. It's where trust replaces logic and surrender replaces control. And when you obey without needing a reason, you begin to walk in a deeper flow with the Spirit. You realize you're not called to control results, you're called to reflect Christ. Your only job is to move when He says move, to wait when He says wait, and to stay planted when He says stay, because breakthrough is always on the other side of consistent obedience. And even if the results don't look like you imagined, your faith will grow, your heart will be refined, and your steps will be ordered by divine purpose. And when it's all said and done, you'll realize that obedience wasn't just the right choice, it was the only path to peace. There's something unexplainable about the kind of peace that comes when everything around you feels uncertain, but your soul is still steady. Something deep that whispers God is here, even when you can't see the full picture, even when the doors haven't opened yet, even when answers haven't come. That peace is not from the world. It doesn't come from comfort, clarity, or control. It comes from the presence of God Himself. It's heaven's signature over your situation, and when you carry that peace, it's not a sign that everything is perfect. It's a sign that the perfect one is holding everything together. Inside of you, it becomes your confirmation, your inner compass that tells you God is working behind the scenes. And while people chase signs, wonders, and outcomes, peace becomes your proof, because the enemy can fake feelings. He can fake opportunities, but he can't fake peace that surpasses understanding. When you've handed it all to God, and your heart stops striving, and your mind stops racing, and suddenly all you feel is stillness, that's not coincidence, that's divine confirmation. And that's how you know He's working in realms you cannot see, orchestrating what you cannot control, and building what you didn't even ask for. Peace is the holy echo of trust. It's the sound your spirit makes when it knows it's in safe hands, and the deeper your faith grows, the louder that peace becomes. It becomes your anchor during delay, your strength during silence, and your clarity during chaos. So stop searching for constant answers and start listening to the stillness within you. If there's peace in your prayer, there's power in your path. If your soul is calm, it means heaven is busy. And even if the storm is still around you, when peace enters you, it means the miracle has already begun, and the God who spoke stillness over the sea is now speaking it into you. There comes a point in your walk with God where you realize that you don't have to speak to be heard, you don't have to explain to be understood, and you don't have to fight to be favored, because the doors God opens for you don't require noise, they require faith. And sometimes the greatest evidence of that faith is your silence when everyone expects you to respond, but you don't when the pressure to defend. Yourself rises, but you stay quiet when people walk away and you let them go without begging or blaming. That kind of quiet courage shakes heaven and silences hell, because it shows that your trust is no longer in human validation, but in divine orchestration. And while others chase influence with noise, God promotes those who trust Him in the quiet places, in the unseen corners of obedience and surrender. You realize that your silence speaks louder in the spirit than your words ever could, because it invites God to speak for you, act for you, and move for you. And when He moves, He opens doors no man can shut, and shuts doors no enemy can open. So don't confuse closed mouths with closed opportunities. Sometimes the quietest seasons lead to the loudest breakthroughs, and the ones who said nothing will walk into something beyond what they imagined, because they chose to wait rather than manipulate. They chose to pray rather than explain, and they chose to be still rather than be seen. So if God has told you to stay quiet, don't panic, don't feel ignored, don't feel small, because your silence is your strength, and heaven hears what your heart can't even express in words. And when it's time, the doors will open, not by your volume, but by your alignment, and those who watched your silence will witness your elevation and know that it wasn't you who did it. It was the one who responds to quiet faith with loud favor.